वृंद की, नामाचार्य श्री हरिदास ठाकुर की। प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधारा श्रीवासदि गौर भक्त वृंद की। श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप गोपीनाथ श्याम कुंड राधा कुंड की, गोवर्धन की, वृंदावन धाम की, मथुरा धाम की, नवदीप धाम की, श्री जगन्नाथ स्वामी की, यमुना माई की, श्रीमती तुलसी देवी की, सामवेद भक्त वृंद की, निताई गौर प्रेमानंदी। All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Gauranga. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srila Gurudev ki jai. Namah Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pastaya Bhutale Srimate Bir Krishna Goswami Niti Namne Namaham Sanikashaya Prabhupada Priyate Shruti Drashti Nishthabem Tasya Vakyanubhadine. Okay, good morning. Hare Krishna to you all. Welcome to this morning Srimad Bhagavatam class. We are reading from Canto 3, Chapter 26, titled Fundamental Principles of Material Nature, and we are reading from text 51. Welcome also to our online viewers on Mayapur TV and ISKCON Sydney YouTube and Facebook. So, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devam Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudire Nasta Prayashu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki Krishnaya Vasudevaya Devaki Nandanaya Cha Nanda Gopa Kumaraya Govindaya Namo Namaha. Okay. Tatastena Tena Nu Tatastena Vidhebhyo Yuktebhyo Nandam Achetanam Yuktebhyo Nandam Achetanam Utitam Purusho Yasmad Udatishtad Asau Virad Tatastena Nu Vidhebhyo Yuktebhyo Andam Achetanam Utitam Purusho Yasmad Udatishtad Asau Virat Tatastena Nu Vidhebhyo Yuktebhyo Andam Achetanam Utitam Purusho Yasmad Udattishtad Asau Virat Tatastena Nu Vidhebhyo Yuktebhyo Andam Achetanam Utitam Purusho Yasmad Udatistad Asau Virat Tatastena Nu Vidhebhyo Yuktebhyo Andam Achetanam Utitam Purusho Yasmad उदात्तिष्ठादसो विराट् तथस्तेनानुविद्धेभ्यो युक्तेभ्यो अंडम् अचेतनम् उत्थितं पुरुषो यस्मात् उदात्तिष्ठादसो विराट् तथस्तेनानुविद्धेभ्यो युक्तेभ्यो अंडम् अचेतनम् उत्थितं पुरुषो यस्मात् उदात्तिष्ठादसो विराट्. Okay. Tata, then, tena, by the Lord, anuvidhebhya, from these 7 principles, roused into activity, yuktebhya, united, andam, an egg, achetanam, unintelligent, uthitam, arose, purusha, cosmic being, yasmat, from which, udattistat, appeared, aso, that, virat, celebrated. Okay, so the translation of this purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So, from these 7 principles, roused into activity and united by the presence of the Lord, an unintelligent egg arose, from which appeared the celebrated cosmic being. So we can all repeat. From these 7 principles, roused into activity and united by the presence of the Lord, an unintelligent egg arose, from which appeared the celebrated cosmic being. Okay, so we've got the purport. In sex life, the combination of matter from the parents, which involves emulsification and secretion, creates the situation whereby a soul is received within matter. And the combination of matter gradually develops into the complete body. The same principle exists in the universal creation. The ingredients were present, but only when the Lord entered into the material elements was the matter actually agitated. That is the cause of creation. We can see this in our ordinary experience. Although we may have clay, water, and fire, the elements take shape of a brick only when we labor to combine them. Without the living energy, there is no possibility that matter can take shape. Similarly, this material world does not develop unless agitated by the Supreme Lord as the Virat Purusha. Yasmad udhishtad asau virat. By his agitation, space was created, and the universal form of the Lord also manifested therein. So, Mangal Charan. Om Agyana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manovistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swa Padantikam. Vande Ham Shri Gurum Shri Yutafadakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha. Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitamscha. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Deen Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastute Tapta Kanchana Gorangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpa Turubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Vaevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Okay. So this is a technical topic rather than more of the pastimes of Lord Krishna himself about creation. And basically we are studying the Sankhya philosophy. So I will quote something from the Chaitanya Charitamrita also, let's see how we go. On what is this Sankhya philosophy in terms of the elements of nature and creation. At the moment, we can see from these particular shlokas that from previous shlokas you would have come across the elements, right? There are so many elements, the 24 elements, however many elements. And then the Sankhya philosophy also looks at the soul. After studying the 24 elements, the soul, and then I realized it's the 25th element, and then the super soul within it, which is the 626th element. Now that's actually all mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita. We'll try to look at it in a little bit detail. Actually, I might just look at it now so while we are talking about it. Just to give you a recap, or at least a quotation from where we got this from. So if you look at Bhagavad Gita, chapter 13, text from 6 to 7, that will tell us about what those elements are. I'll just read it quickly. Mahabhutani ahankaro buddhir avakyam evacha indrani dashaikam cha pancha chendriya gocharaha icha devesha shukham dukham sangatas chetana dhriti etat kshetram samasena sa vikram udhartaram. So the translation of that reads, the 5 great elements, false ego, intelligence, the unmanifested 10 senses, the mind, the 5 sense objects, desire, hatred, happiness, distress, the aggregate, the life symptoms and convictions, all these are considered in summary to be the field of activities and its interactions. In other words, all of those are the elements of material creation. So if you want to read more about it, it's in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 13.6 to 7. So you would have learned that there are the 5 basic elements, which is the earth, water, fire, and ether, air. After that, there is a false intelligence, false ego, intelligence, and mind. Then there are 5 senses: the eyes, the nose, tongue, skin, and then the 5 working senses, which is according to this purport: voice, legs, hands, anus, and genitals. Then obviously the mind I've mentioned. Then the 5 objects of senses: smell, taste, form, touch, and sound. All this is like 24. And then I'll just read the other reference, which is Bhagavad Gita 13.25. Now this one here, Bhagavad Gita 13.25. Now this one here explains, I'll just read the purport. The Lord informs Arjuna that the conditioned souls can be divided into 2 classes. One who self-realization, and those who are atheists. Atheists are those who don't believe in God. So going down to the bottom here, it says, this is what I was talking about, what Sankhya philosophy, how it looks at these material elements. The Sankhya philosophers analyze these material world into 24 elements. Sankhya philosophy comes from Kapila Dev, which we are learning right at the moment. He's teaching Devahuti. So they analyze this material world into 24 elements, and then they place the individual soul as the 25th item. When they are able to understand the nature of the individual soul to be transcendental to the material elements, they are able to also understand that above the individual soul there is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And then he becomes the 26th element. Thus, gradually, they also come to the standard of devotional service in Krishna consciousness. Those who work without fruitive results are also perfect in the attitude. They are given a chance to advance. So, here, if you read this Bhagavad Gita 13.25, you will not only understand that there are 24 elements, but what the Sankhya philosophy is trying to tell us is it also studies the soul, about the soul and the super soul. It puts everything together, puts it all together, how the creation happens. Now, to put it simply, when we read this purport, it said you look at the ingredients of the how to make a brick. So you've got clay, water, fire, whatever. And then it's going to stay there. The water is going to stay there, the fire is going to stay there, the clay is going to stay there, unless and until you mix all of them. You mix all them, and then you do some laborious task, and then it becomes a brick. So Sankhya philosophy also looks at it like that. Those 24 elements are there, but they're just there. They're inert. They're not moving. They're just there. Actually, it is described, the material nature is basically inert. Inert means inactive. It's just there, just like this table is here. Unless I move it, it's not going to move. So the material nature, those 24 elements, Sankhya philosophy believes the same thing. Those 24 elements are there. It's not going to move unless the Supreme Personality moves it. In other words, mixes it. Right? So the life, that's why they call it, I think the other day we had a question, why is the soul and the super soul looked at as a 25th and 26th element? Basically, it looks at everything together in a nutshell, what combines, what creates, how this material nature is created. So the soul, which is us, the jivas, we are impregnated into the material nature by the glance of Mahavishnu or Lord Krishna. So the soul, that's us, that's one element. And then the super soul, the one who creates these things, or who moves and actually makes these elements move, agitates these 24 elements and take shape. That's the super soul, the Paramatma. So then that becomes the 26th element. So basically, Sankhya philosophy might be looking a little bit boring because it doesn't have Lord Krishna running around and playing with the gopis and things like that. But if you want to know the scientific explanation, the technical explanation on material nature, then you look at this Bhagavad Gita, the Srimad Bhagavatam. What happens is it says there that in here, it says this Krishna actually divides these elements into 7 principles. So there are 7 divisions, according to him. Perhaps it's also the 3 modes of material nature included in there as well. So the 7 principles, out of that, when it's all combined, there is an unintelligent egg. Now, what does that mean? Unintelligent egg. I will try to read it. It's very nicely explained in the Chaitanya Charimrita, I believe. So just to give you an explanation, actually it is very nicely described in the Srimad Bhagavatam also. So let me read this. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is Canto 3. We will read it a little bit later. But here, what is this unintelligent egg that comes about? This unintelligent egg really is the universal egg. It says that the universal egg, the universe is in the shape of an egg. So if you're trying to imagine an egg, that's why it's in this shlok, there's got andam. Written there, achetanam. Achetanam means unintelligent. Chetanam means intelligence. Chetana means intelligence. Achetanam means unintelligent. Now, the universe is in the form of an egg. If you can imagine in mathematical terms, the spherical, in the form of a sphere. It's an egg, and it lies there for thousands of years, celestial years, until Lord Krishna himself decides to enter it. So it's staying there inert. That's why it's called unintelligent. It's called unintelligent because it hasn't done anything yet. It hasn't moved. It's just waiting for Lord Krishna to come and agitate it and starts working. So activates it, makes it active. And then the cosmic manifestations, all the jiva souls, everything, the procreation, it starts happening. So in Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, I'll just read it. We will read about it later. But just to give you an idea, this universal egg or the universe is in the shape of an egg. Is called the manifestation of material energy. So this universal egg is basically the material energy. Now, what is this material energy there? What is it actually? What are the elements? It's different layers. So if you want to know what this universe is made of, first of all, it looks like an egg. Next, it has layers. So it's got a layer of water. Then it's got a layer of air. Then fire. Then sky. Then ego. And Mahatattva increases the thickness one after another. So if you have ever read when Arjun tries to cross the universe, he comes across all these elements. And when he crosses the air or the water, all these elements, one after another, they become like thicker and thicker. So it becomes more challenging to cross one layer after another. It's not easy in order to go through the universe and then go out of the universe towards the spiritual sky. So that is what our universe is made up of. And it looks like the shape of a shiny egg, actually. It's very shiny, if you didn't know. Later on, I think it's in the Chaitanya Charimrita. If you read that, it explains a bit better. It looks like a shiny egg. And it's written here in Srimad Bhagavatam. Each layer is 10 times bigger than the previous one. So if you go into the layer of water, it's quite massive. And then when you go to the air layer is 10 times more, it's bigger than the water. And then the fire is 10 times bigger than the air. So each layer is even more challenging than the last. And within this egg, there is the universal form of Lord Hari. So can you imagine, if you can imagine that, how powerful he must be? Is the power and the potency of the Lord Mahavishnu is unlimited. We cannot in our tiny brains even comprehend. So this universal egg or the universe is the shape of an egg. It's called the manifestation of material energy. Now material energy, as we know, is inert. It doesn't do anything until Lord Krishna does something about it. He glances at it and then it starts functioning. So this purport is quite interesting. The universe or the universal sky, which we can visualize, is innumerable planets. It's shaped like an egg. As an egg, it is covered by a shell. The universe is also covered with various layers. So we are just repeating what we just understood. The first layer is water. The next is fire. Then air. Then sky. And then the ultimate holding crust is pradhana. Within this egg-like universe is the universal form of the Lord, the Virat Purusha. And all the different planetary situations are parts of his body. So it's really interesting. The lowest planetary system, Patal, is considered to be the soul of the feet. Yeah, the feet are supposed to be the most inferior part of any body, anyone's body. So Patal is where the hellish planets are. And then the earth is considered to be the belly of the Lord, and Brahmalok, or the highest planetary system, is considered to be the head of the Lord. So all these combined. Now, what does that mean for us, actually? I mean, after Lord Krishna actually says to Arjun in the Bhagavad Gita, he says, what's the use of knowing all this technical stuff? Really? You're not going to change anything, or it's going to increase your knowledge. But what's the use? The use is that once we come to understand what is this material nature, just like the Sankhya philosophy here, Kapil Dev is explaining to Devahuti, this is the material elements, this is the material energy. Nothing happens unless and until Mahavishnu enters, and then he agitates the material nature, and then the soul gets in there, impregnated into the material nature. We start, being created. Then Lord Mahavishnu enters the living entities as the super soul. After studying all that, we decide, or we realize, we are the soul, not the body. And what's the use of knowing these elements? Well, there is one important thing. Maybe I'll ask you a question for you. When we realize we are the soul, what happens? So what is the conclusion that we come up as? What is the conclusion? Anyone at all? Yes? Yes, we begin to understand, that's correct. We begin to understand what our position is and what is our position. Yes, we don't belong in this material world. That's the whole thing. That's the whole point. And it's correct, 100%. When we study the Sankhya philosophy, we think, okay, these are the elements. We are the soul. Then we realize, oh, hey, wait a minute. We don't really belong here. We're not supposed to be here. As Prabhupada says very nicely, he says, the soul is just like oil into water. The material energy is like water. The soul is just like the oil floating in it. It never mixes. The oil can never mix with water. So what our realization then becomes is the material energy, it is very temporary. Now, very simple explanation of that would be, can anybody here actually guarantee you 100% that they are 100% happy? They have no issues, no problems. Anyone here is totally, absolutely happy in bliss? No, no one. Someone has to worry about permanent residency. Someone has to worry about education. Someone has to worry about their health. They're growing old. Or their family is separated from them. Someone has to worry about corona. I think there's another wave coming, right? Or is already here. Yeah, I just spoke to one Mataji and the entire family had corona again. So no one is happy. That's the whole point. Everyone has issues. So that when you study the Sankhya philosophy, then you come across this knowledge. Oh my goodness, this is material energy and nobody is happy. And Prabhupada was actually saying that every time we try to make ourselves comfortable, we try our best to live comfortably, live happily, but there is always an element missing. There's always a void in our heart, always. There's always something missing. No one is ever totally happy about anything, anywhere. So then the soul realizes, oh, wait a minute. This is material world. This is material energy. I'm not supposed to be here. I'm supposed to be somewhere else. Now, in the Bhagavad Gita that we just read, I think it was 13.6, right? In that, 13.25. In that, Krishna was telling Arjun that there are two classes of men. One who are into self-realization, and the other ones are atheists. Two types. So, in other words, class them as devotees and non-devotees, or Vaishnavas and non-Vaishnavas. So, the soul realizes it's miserable, the individual. There are two kinds of soul, two kinds of people who realize they're miserable. One is a devotee, and another one is a non-devotee. Two people. So what is the difference then? If we're going to be miserable anyway, whether we're a devotee or non-devotee, we are in material nature anyway. So what is the point of bhakti? We'll be miserable anyway. Can anybody, I'll ask a few questions today. So can anybody tell me why, if we're going to be miserable in the material world anyway, why practice bhakti in the first place? What's the difference? The devotee is unhappy, the non-devotee is also unhappy. What is bhakti going to do? Yes? Yes, it will enable us to escape, but in the meantime, we are both miserable. The devotee is miserable, the non-devotee is miserable. It enables us to escape. This is what a class by Kadamba Kanana Maharaj, he described this. He said, you are not wrong, it is basically the same idea, the same principle. It will help us escape. The devotee's attitude changes. Then, say the non-devotee. The non-devotee is like I'm miserable, I'm hopeless, I'm tiny, it's not going to get out, nothing's going to change, everything is bad. And, the devotee doesn't have any ounce of hope that things will ever change. The pain is so much, the suffering is so much. But as the devotee thinks, okay, I'm suffering, I'm going to die, I'm going old, or whatever the problems are, it's never going to go away. However, I got the mercy of Lord Nityananda, who's the original spiritual master. I got the mercy of Lord Nityananda to chant the holy names so I can get out of here, escape. But because of the mercy of Lord Nityananda, everything is good, even though everything is bad. So that's the difference between a devotee and a non-devotee, the suffering. So if you were a non-devotee before and you are here and you're practicing bhakti, you will find that difference. Why, when you are outside, nothing's going to change, nothing's going to improve, everything is just hopeless. The same situation is here, but you have the hope. Lord Krishna is there, Gopinath is there, everything is good. So it makes us bearable. Living in material world makes it bearable. And there's always hope that there is an afterlife and you improve. And that's really the whole gist of realizing these things and why we want to study the material elements. Because material elements in itself, it's really not really helpful. We know there's fire, we know there's water. How is that going to help us? It just basically increases our understanding, our knowledge. And in the Sankhya philosophy, Krishna very clearly says to his mother that we need this knowledge. Spiritual knowledge is essential for bhakti. Because without knowledge, we cannot realize that we have to be engaged in devotional service in the first place. Now, devotional service, we know there are 9 kinds. 9 kinds of devotional service. The very important one is the 2, hearing and chanting. That's the most applicable in this day and age. So, Kadamba Kanana Swami was telling us, in this class, he said, once we realize we've got to be devotee, it still doesn't end over there. Because then things become a bit harder, because we are told you have to practice the 4 regulative principles and chant 16 rounds. And it's just like, these layers you have to cross. Okay, so you cross the water element, now the fire and the water, the air, the earth. It gets harder and harder. Every layer is 10 times worse than the last one. So every regulative principle, or chanting 16 rounds, or some chant. How many rounds do we chant in Ekadashi? 25, yeah. That's general. My Guru Maharaj says more or less, more than 16. There is no limit really. If you want to chant, some people chant 60 rounds, 64 rounds. So every regulative principle is harder than the last one. So it becomes harder and harder. So then, so what is it that makes us follow these 4 regulative principles? Kadamba Kanana Swami said, when we take initiation, then we are compelled to follow all of them. Because we are under vow, we respect our spiritual masters, we respect Srila Prabhupada, we automatically maintain those 4 regulative principles. So then the other side of it, there's always flip side of the story. If you're not ready to follow them for life, because we've got to follow it for life. It's not something that we do today and it's all hunky-dory and we are, have a title and it's all glory. No, it's for life. So unless you are ready to take that on for life, don't take initiation. However, if you have taken initiation, then we follow that for life. Krishna and the Guru empowers you. And what Kadamba Kanana Swami Maharaj said was, then you become empowered to achieve those things you never could have achieved in the first place. After initiation or taking shelter from Guru, you end up climbing mountains that you could have never climbed before. And it's true. Yeah. Personally, I've been initiated for so long now, practicing Krishna consciousness. Sometimes there are things that I never would have thought that I'd achieve. Because Krishna throws you challenges. There's lots of hurdles you cross. Many, many hurdles. There was a time when I was given a challenge where I could not even chant for 2 seconds even. Not a single Mahamantra. There was a health issue, could not even chant. That was the realization I got at that time, was that given everything, chanting is the most important thing, even more important than breathing. I was really, really down in that one, thinking, I can't even chant. That's really bad. Can't even chant. I need to chant. You pray harder and harder until you can chant. So, despite those issues, despite the limitations, you will understand that actually your priority is basically chanting. That's the most important thing. The most important precious jewel is not your PR, not your wealth, not your social position, your social title. It is the ability to chant the holy names as given by Lord Nityananda. So then the devotee and the non-devotee, they realize this. So it's really important for each and every living entity to become Krishna conscious. Otherwise, you'll be miserable forever. So that is the conclusion. It's a short class today. Are there any questions or comments? Yes. Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. That is the answer is in that question itself. There is no presence of the Lord at that time. That's why it's an unintelligent egg. As soon as he enters the egg, then it becomes an intelligent. At the moment, like as I just described, it's written in the purport and in the Bhagavad Gita that we just read, the material nature, like I was saying, this table is really immovable. Right now, this table is not intelligent. But if I move it, then it starts moving. So that's why the egg is known as unintelligent, because its material nature, that's inert. The elements, it's not moving at the moment. It's just there. As soon as the Lord enters into it and lays down on the waters, and then things start happening. And then the egg suddenly becomes Chaitana. It becomes intelligent. So that's what... Yes. Correct. Those are the eggs, yeah. Yeah, from every pore of his skin. And so there are billions of universes. We cannot imagine the immense power of the Lord, and that is just a quarter of his. The 3/4 of it is in the spiritual sky. We are just a fraction. So the unlimited power, we can't imagine. Yes. No, the Purusha, the cosmic being, is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Vishnu. Yes, yeah. He's a super soul, but not in the form of super soul. He's in the form of Mahavishnu. Yes. Yes, it is just Virat Purusha, the full potency. I think it is, normally the Virat Roop is Lord Krishna when he shows it to Arjun. But in this particular context, it just means Mahavishnu, I would say. Mahatattva. It's known as Mahatattva. Yep. Yes. Mm-hmm. 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 Yes, correct. Mm-hmm. Bhagavad Gita. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes. Sankhya. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Soul. Yes, the time as well. Mm-hmm. 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 Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes. Um, I'll have to do more research on that, but from my understanding, let me just see if I can find that particular part where you have said, yes, other philosophers, when Prabhupada mentions them, they would be our other acharyas. If it is written in the context of bona fide, someone who is bona fide, and giving those purports and explanations. But let's see, Chaitanya Charamrita, because Krishna had said the Supreme Personality is the time factor. He is. And he uses that time factor to agitate those 24 material elements. And then, here. So let me read this. This is from Chaitanya Charimrita, Adi Lila 1.53. The cause of creation is the Mahatattva, which we just discussed, or Mahatattva, or total material energy. And its effect is the creation itself. But neither cause nor effect existed in the beginning. They emanated from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as did the energy of time. So there is this explanation that it is the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the energy of time. The source of birth of cosmic manifestation of Mahatattva is the personality of Godhead, which we just discussed. I said the Mahatattva is the personality of Godhead, which you were asking Purusha, the cosmic being. This is confirmed throughout Srimad Bhagavatam and the Bhagavad Gita. In the Bhagavad Gita 10.8, the Lord says, Aham Sarvasya Prabhava. That's a very famous one. I am the fountainhead of all emanations, the material cosmos being temporary, sometimes manifest and unmanifest, but its energy emanates from the Supreme Absolute Lord. Now, there has to be something here that is about the time. There's quite a lot of material here that's all in the Chaitanya Charimrita that refers to the time. However, from that explanation, we can understand that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is time anyway. If he is there, he is time. And he says in the Bhagavad Gita, time I am. Yes. So then if he is, he would, obviously, the elements would be inclusive. Like if it's Supreme Personality of Godhead, the energy of time is automatically inclusive. But when we talk about the soul and the super soul, it is part of the Sankhya philosophy. Sankhya philosophy is coming directly from Kapil Dev. It is Lord Krishna again. It is not other philosophers, but when you say Sankhya philosophy, it is the study of these material nature given by Lord Kapil Dev directly. So it is something that we take on board as bona fide when we study it in the form of Sankhya philosophy. But generally speaking, 24 elements are basic. And then the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the Mahatattva, is involved in it. Otherwise, these 24 elements are inert and just stay like this stable, immovable. So we've got to have the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is in time, who is the energy of time itself, anyway. And then we've got the soul there also, because without the soul, there are no living entities. Prabhupada says this body is actually dead anyway, unless the soul enters into it. So basically, the movements and everything here, the soul is doing this, basically. So the soul is an important element, as per the Sankhya philosophy. And the super soul is also there, because without the super soul, the soul itself won't move. So we've got the soul there, the super soul, and all the material elements combined. So that's bona fide. We have to take it as 26 in Sankhya philosophy all together. With the time factor, I'd say that he is part of Supreme Personality of Godhead anyway. He is time itself. I hope that, yes, Prabhu. Yes? No, not that I have read. Not the organs, but the senses itself, like sense of touch, smell, taste, even the feelings of hatred and, the willingness of doing things, the desires that come up, but not that what the kidney does and what the heart does, no. There is mention of the heart, obviously, that Lord Krishna is, the super soul is situated near the heart. The brain, yes, the brain is, the brain is actually, it is mentioned because the mind, it sends those impulses to the brain. So basically the mind is more referred to rather than the brain, the mind. Not really the brain, but body organs specifically, no. And the reason for that was, it said somewhere that Krishna is not attached to the body, the material, the things, but he is attached to the soul. He is concerned about the soul. So there is no mention of the body organs because they are just material things. They will deteriorate after death. There's no, basically we use it to function the body, to procreate, or the body functions. The organs are there to make the body functional, as in my understanding. But the Vedas, they don't really go into detail about body organs, what your kidney does, what your heart does, because it's not really relevant to our Vedic scriptures. What we really want to know about is the mind, false ego, the intelligence, the soul, the super soul, that kind of thing. And then basically we focus on the soul, because Krishna is interested in the soul. He's not interested in material things, material elements. Oh, that's scientific. That's scientific theory. So he's asking, that the person dies when the brain dies. That's a scientific fact. But we know that from what our Vedic scriptures say, the body dies when the soul leaves the body. Maybe the brain activity takes a little bit of time to maybe. That is not something that I can know because I'm not a scientist, nor do I have the facts, nor have I experienced it. If I have experienced it in previous life, I don't remember whether my brain was still active while I was dying, while the soul had already left. The brain is still active. I don't know about that. All I know is that Prabhupada has said in his class and in the Vedic scriptures, the body dies when the soul leaves the body. It becomes dead. It is dead anyway. Right now, this body is dead. But because my soul is in here, I'm talking to you, I'm sitting here, I'm active. The minute my soul leaves, and by the way, the soul leaves at any time. Life is really short. So make good use of it. Because you don't know you're going to be here today or tomorrow. So really focus on the soul. Focus on your bhakti, focus on your sadhana, focus on your japa, focus on your following the regulative principles. If you don't have a guru, actively find one. Pray to Krishna to get one. Associate with someone who has the same guru that you'd like. Senior devotee. So those should be our priorities. Does that help? Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much for listening. All glories to Srila Gurudev, Srimad Bhagavatam Puran Ki.